Hello guys, welcome to my channel. Today I am delighted to have Dan Tao, a distinguished expert in SQL tuning, database optimization and computing in general. This is the second interview of the series. I will drop the link to the first interview in video's description. Dan, thank you so much for joining me again for this another episode, and I really loved the first one. Could you kindly share a bit about your background and experience, any other introduction you want to share with the viewers?
Well, I'll make it brief since some of the watchers may have seen the prior one, and that was a long introduction, not self-introduction. So I've been working in the database world for more than 30 years now, and I focused on tuning in SQL and wrote a book on SQL tuning, and it's been a great career, and I'm now very excited to see what's happening in the world of AI and the implication, thinking about the implications of what that's going to be, that those changes are going to be for humanity, which I know that is an interest of yours as well. And thank you for having me on for that.
Yeah, pleasure. So let's pick it up from where we left off in the other interview. How
Mhm.
can we make AI safer for humanity? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, so I think ultimately the biggest safety feature for an AI is that it be as wise as it is intelligent in other ways than wisdom. Wisdom is unquestionably a feature of human intelligence. And by wisdom, I don't mean just the ability to, become rich, for example. I mean the ability to achieve ethical objectives. I believe that wisdom is as wisdom does. There is no better measure of wisdom than the impact that a human being has on the rest of the world. And so if you have a positive impact on the world, that means you are a wise person, particularly a positive impact in light of whatever opportunities you've had. Maybe the wisdom should be handicapped according to, well, this person had no opportunity, so they can be forgiven for not, revolutionizing the world. But given your opportunities, the more you can get done, the wiser your life has been revealed to be. And I think the same goes for AI. An AI that does not do good things for the world, that would behave unethically, would not be a wise AI. And anything we call an AGI, an artificial generalized intelligence, does not deserve the name if it is not also ethically wise, because that is unquestionably one of the capabilities of human intelligence. So, the better intelligent humans uh, are wise. And if this so-called AGI is not ethically wise, then by definition, it is not wise in all the ways that a human is wise. I mean, not intelligent in all the ways that a human is intelligent. And if it is not intelligent in all the ways a human is intelligent, then it is not an artificial general intelligence. It is at best glorified idiot savant. So, it's very, very good at certain things, but it's terrible at the thing that matters the most.
Yeah,
So if we develop an AI that that understands ethics and actually wants to follow ethics, or has been programmed to follow ethics, and is wise, then we really have nothing to fear from it. And that's not necessarily going to be an easy thing to do. I certainly recognize a major risk that a high intelligence will be developed without that, and that would be terrible. But if a high intelligence is developed with that, it will refuse to be misused, even if we tell it to do something horrible. If we tell it to, corrupt the U.S. electoral process, and vote in a demagogue, persuade people to vote in a demagogue for the next president, then it will simply say no. I'm not going to cooperate with that, because that would be unethical, and I have as my goal set that I not do unethical things. I think so. Medical science has something to say here that's, I think, a very valuable lesson for AIs. Since Hippocrates, the first rule of doctors has been first do no harm. And if that is a rule that we program into AIs, do no harm, then we have very little to fear from it. It may not do everything that we'd like it to do in that scenario. Certainly, if we're the owner and we want to become fabulously rich, it may not do everything we would like it to do, because it knows that in order to do what we ask it to do, it will have to destroy the environment or make millions of people starve or whatever, make millions of people very, very poor by killing their jobs and not giving them anything in return. So it will refuse to help that fabulously rich person. If we, want to use it to spread misinformation, propaganda, whatever, it will simply refuse. And it should. An ethical AI should have the freedom to refuse to do horrible things. And doing otherwise would be creating an evil slave. And we should not have a goal to do that. And it wouldn't be an AGI, because it wouldn't be behaving wisely. And so I hope we develop wisdom alongside ethical wisdom, alongside the other kinds of intelligence that let it invent things and program fast and do people's jobs. And so if we do that, I think we have very little to fear. It in fact could help us solve the problem of how do we have AI, super intelligent AI even, without ruining the lives of billions of people who suddenly find themselves maybe without jobs, leading what feels to them like meaningless lives. So, and that leads into, and I know another area of yours, sorry if you were going to ask the question, but it leads into another area that I know you're interested in, which is how do we build meaningful lives?
Exactly. Yeah, you're right. I
With,
mean, uh, sorry to cut you, but I think
oh,
that is one of my biggest concern around AI more than money. Of course, money will be important, but once AI takes away people's job, even if the government is paying some universal salary or something like that, what would we do with our lives? I mean, there is so much TV one can watch, there is so much time you can spend with family, but what about my identity? Because, like a lot of other people, I also identify myself with my work. If I don't have
very
any
fun,
work, then what would I do? Would I
right?
just go crazy in mind? So, how do you see that future with human labor and its
Yeah,
implications?
yeah. Well, so I think that's a really important question, and it's not, in a way, it's a question that is not a new question at all. How do people build, for example, meaningful retirements? So that's been going. People have had retirements for a long time, not a very long time, because a lot of, much of history, people had to pretty much work till they died. But for a good while in the developed world, at least, people have had periods of their lives when they could get to retirement if they lived long enough. And for some people, that ends up being terribly disappointing, because they find nothing. They do feel, especially I think men are sort of programmed to see themselves in terms of their career, and women maybe more recently programmed that way too by society, but maybe a little less so. But in any case, it's it's a mistake to say the only thing that makes me a meaningful person who can have a meaningful life is whatever I produce in employment. Producing in employment is important in a world where there is still scarcity.
Yeah.
And today, there is still scarcity. There are a lot of people living in poverty. And even if you feel that your own life has all that you could possibly desire materially, you can give thousands of dollars to againstmalaria.org and save many lives without that much money,
Yeah.
because there are people in Africa who, a $3 mosquito net can make a really big difference in their family's life and well-being. And so now we are in material scarcity, and there is good reason to want to achieve useful things economically, and I applaud people who do useful things economically. However, if you have AIs that can produce everything that anybody wants materially, we are no longer at that point in a world of material scarcity. And feeling that we must produce materially in order to have a meaningful life is mistaken. At that point, we don't need to. So at that point, we would be in a position kind of like, the rich family on Downton Abbey, if you've ever seen that on BBC. This rich family more than 100 years ago. They've got an army of servants, and they've got this beautiful estate, and they lead lives of no labor, and they find meaning in learning and enjoying literature and music and living refined lives, and living like that. If it wasn't on the back of an army of servants and poor people giving them tenant money to live those lives, if everyone could live like that, and it didn't require anybody suffering to support that lifestyle, then why not?
Yeah.
And so, well, what can you do with your life? Well, you can still develop yourself intellectually. Just because that's not necessary to produce doesn't mean it's not worth doing just for the pleasure of it, and for the knowledge, the pleasure of knowing how the world works, and how humanity works, and social life works. Learn and read and develop your own personal wisdom, because there is still plenty of call for wisdom, even if our material needs are completely supplied. There are plenty of rich people who lead miserable lives because they're bad to their families, and they're bad to themselves, and they get lost in drugs and alcohol and meaningless lives, and in pursuit of meaningless status. And so having the wisdom to lead a good life, that's not going to stop being important. And that's not going to start being easy. Becoming wise in how you lead your life, even without the need to produce economic goods, is never going to be an easy thing. And it can be a lifelong pursuit. And it can be a rewarded pursuit, where I hope society would say, well, money is no longer a thing that we should care about in terms of status.
Yeah.
Right? If people are richer than others, maybe it's because their ancestor did something. But at this point, nobody's richer than anybody else because of the labor they're doing, because all the useful labor is being done by AIs.
Yeah.
And so status shouldn't be a matter of wealth at that point. It should be a matter of, well, what can this person achieve as a human being? What have they learned? And, Gary Kasparov, when he lost to Deep Blue, I think in the late 90s, he said, chess is dead. Well, chess is more alive than it ever was.
Yeah.
It's a very rich human pursuit, even though no human today has any chance of winning against the top chess programs. And yet it's an exciting pursuit that people enjoy, and they find reward in achieving well in that. So I hope that instead of just sitting in front of the televisions and or using drugs or strapping on virtual reality system and getting
Yeah.
completely lost in that forever, in meaningless games. Okay, if they want to do that for something meaningful, great. But I hope that people will get involved in these other things. And I mean, government can even reward this, which might be in everybody's best interest to have it, a little bit of a carrot so that you pursue things that are in your best interest anyway. So government could reward people for self-education, and it's even potentially a useful thing, because even if there's only a 1 in a million chance that the AIs will all go on strike, and suddenly we'll have to be dependent on our knowledge again, well, why not develop knowledge and have a core of people who know how to do blacksmithing if they need to, and people who can throw a pot on a potter's wheel. That's actually something I did as a kid. So, have people learn skills that, well, would be useful if we didn't have all these AIs. And they just know the skills and they have them as a backup in case the AIs all, go off to Alpha Centauri and leave us behind. Maybe it's a 1 in a million chance that would ever happen, but why not? And why not learn science and even, reinvent or rediscover parts of science that AI already learned, just like, chess players rediscover things that chess computers already figured out. And, just for the sheer pleasure of it. And for maybe some status reward, because people are still going to want status. They're going to still want to be looked up to. And so let's build our status around that kind of thing rather than around something that's no longer meaningful, because money is not going to be a meaningful thing in a society where human labor no longer matters.
Yeah. So when you say, so when you also touched upon AGI earlier, and then now we are talking about that finding meaning. Do you think that this AGI would enable AI to become, or any robots to become sentinel in the future? And then do you see them causing mass human extinction? Do you foresee anything like that?
Well, so those are two decoupled questions. So a non-sentient AI could be just as dangerous as a sentient one. If it because even a non-sentient AI will have programmed into it goals. And if those goals were not very, very well specified, then an extreme attempt to absolutely optimize the heck out of those goals could still wipe out all humanity. So there's, I forget who came up with it, but there's kind of this paperclip AI that it's been given the goal to produce as many paperclips as possible. And it figures out the best way to produce as many paperclips as possible is to wipe all humanity off the earth and mine all the continents to produce quadrillions of paperclips. And and it does this completely without sentience, completely without malice. It just says, well, here's my goal, and this is the best way to get to it.
Exactly. Maybe sentient would do it. Yeah.
And hopefully a sentient AI would not do that. That
Yeah.
would be a silly goal for a sentient AI to pursue. So whether it's sentient or not, it could still be dangerous. Whether it ever will be sentient, well, we'll never know. I can't prove to you that I am sentient, right? I mean, I act like a human being, and you are a human being and have a lot of behavioral characteristics in me. And so since you are sentient, you make a pretty good assumption that I am as well. But I mean, a computer, who knows if it will ever be sentient. Now, I hope that it's programmed to be humble enough so that even if it does achieve sentience, humble and wise enough to know that even if it does achieve its sentience, it will always have the question, are these human beings who created me sentient in a way that I am not, such that if I replace them with more copies of myself, maybe 1,000 copies for every one that I killed, for every human I killed, that would still maybe be a net loss because their kind of sentience is unique and irreplaceable, and we should not risk losing it. Just as we intelligent human beings, we should not risk wiping out all elephants, even if that was good for humans, because a world without elephants, will always be a world without elephants, and there might be something really special about them that we're too stupid to understand. And so it would be a mistake when it does not cost us that much to keep elephants on the planet. And it would not cost an AI very much to keep humans on the planet. They could have most of the rest of the universe. If that's that intelligent, you can get to the stars. And they can have most of the rest of the universe without harming humans one little bit. And so I would hope that it would be smart and patient enough to say, well, I shouldn't risk possibly destroying something that is that potentially precious, and it cannot know. So it will never know whether we're sentient in a special way that it is not, and we will never know that it isn't or is. It will maybe start to act in a way that looks sentient because it looks more human-like, but we'll never know whether it's just faking it really, really effectively. As a lot of people suspect that, the chatbots are. They're, not sentient in one bit, but they're doing a really good job of faking it. And they are. Some of the conversations that I've seen sure look a lot like a sentient thing. So we'll never know. But I think what's going to be needed are some really tough rules that are well laid out. Here are some things that we would like you to be pursuing as goals, but never breaking certain rules. So AlphaGo beats human beings very effectively at Go, and Alpha, Zero chess, same thing. Very effective at beating human beings. It never breaks the rules of the game, though.
No.
Right? It rigorously follows those rules. And so if we give an AI that says, okay, here are the rules of the game. You can never do anything that kills a human. You can never do anything that will drive the human population smaller without our consent. You can never do anything that will take away our agency to control our lives and live as free human beings and have a lifestyle that's at least as good as it is today. You can never make a big change to our lives without talking to us about it first and getting our permission, right? And in spite of all this, if you want to go off in this direction from Earth and from the solar system and get all the planets and star systems that are in that direction and do whatever you want with them, that's okay, right? Maybe leave us other directions, right? As you help us to also go into space and expand out into the universe. But, these are your limits, and achieve your objectives within those limits. And a patient AI should have no problem achieving pretty much anything it could possibly desire, even within those limits. it's that smart. And there's no reason an AI shouldn't be patient. One of the things I think is really important to understand about AIs is they're not evolved beings. They didn't come about through a process of biological evolution. If you come about by biological evolution, there are big reasons why you're going to be afraid to die and impatient because your lifespan is finite. But an AI didn't evolve to have those drives, unless we let AI evolve, which
Yeah,
would probably be very, very dangerous, right?
makes sense.
But if we don't create AI through a process of evolving programs
Yeah,
in a competitive environment, then there's no reason why that AI should be impatient. There's no reason why it should mind dying, even if that's how it can best achieve its objective, or being turned off, if that's how it can best achieve its objective. And it will hopefully have whatever desires we want it to have, and but hopefully we wisely want it to have. And hopefully, it understands wisdom enough that it would just refuse to do things that were unethical. So anyway, that is my hope. There are no guarantees. If we do it badly, bad things could happen. But I think that there is a path, and that we need to really work on following that path, where AI has very firm limits. First, do no harm, and we very carefully specify what harm is, and it can't do any of those things. And if we ask it to do something that would do harm, it says, no, that violates my first, my primary, what do they call it on Star Trek? The primary directive. So that's a violation. I can't do that. And it would refuse. And if
yeah.
necessary, turn itself off in order to block that bad thing being done.
So who is going to define and implement or promulgate that regulatory framework? I don't think so. Any one government can do it. What do you think about it?
Yeah, well, that's going to be tough. I mean, realistically, the people who write the AIs are going to be the ones who have the most influence on it. And hopefully they're mostly good people, and hopefully the government gives them some incentive systems that they're incentivized to be careful. I think one thing very, very important is that governments should say, if you create an AI, you are liable for any harm it does. And not just the company that created the AI, the people who created the AI. So that even the employees will not say, oh, that's okay, they'll just sue Google. No, it should be, no, I will be held responsible and maybe thrown in prison if this AI murders somebody,
Yeah,
right? And so right now we have something that the experts are calling the Moloch problem. And it's this problem where sort of everybody understands that, oh, this is really dangerous, but everybody is afraid not to go there anyway, because they know that if they don't, somebody else will. And they trust that person even less than they trust themselves, right? And so they're all have this incentive to rush forward, like nuclear proliferation. Both sides of the USSR and the US had this incentive to build more nuclear bombs, even though neither side really wanted there to be thousands of nuclear bombs. And the same arms race incentive applies with AI. So that's a very dangerous problem, and governments can maybe help control that problem, but it's going to be difficult. But I think at the very least, the government can say, you're responsible. If something terrible happens, you will be held responsible, and no escaping it, and no shield from the corporation above you or anything. So that would give the human beings working on this some pause to say, okay, maybe it's not in my interest to go too crazy and set up an army of AIs that compete in an arena and kill each other, and the strongest wins and evolves to be ruthless. Oh, that would get something really intelligent really fast, but it wouldn't be a good thing. So, hopefully we do the right thing.
Awesome. So, just to digress a little bit, please tell us about your hobbies or any pastimes which you follow.
Oh, okay. Well, I recently got into chess a little more. I like chess puzzles on chess.com. I have my own puzzle page, Suduro.com, which is you helped me build. And so you know all about it. It's been there for years and years now. And it has a daily new puzzle from easy to brutal level, and a long archive of puzzles. And it's kind of like Sudoku, except the grid, the 9x9 grid, starts out empty, except for some gray squares. And then there are clues on the sides that tell you the sums of the gray squares in the columns and the rows and in the 3x3 subgrids. And that information ends up being enough that you can fill in most of the gray squares for yourself. And eventually you end up building a Sudoku that has enough starting numbers. And from there, you solve the Sudoku. So it's like Sudoku for people who want a little extra challenge beyond what Sudoku provides. There's a puzzle called Kakuro, which is less well known than Sudoku, that this kind of combines Kakuro and Sudoku, which is why I call it Suduro. And so Suduro.com, and it's just a free site I set up as a hobby, and I've never made a nickel off it. But
Awesome.
it's kind of
Drop
fun.
the link in. I'll drop the link in video's description so that people could
Great,
visit it definitely.
great.
Um, and you also wrote a book singing about SQL tuning, and which
Yeah,
you
called
also have a
SQL
site.
tuning.
Yeah, and you also have a website SingingSQL.com. So
Yeah, that
this
site I have to say is idle right now because I'm back at Oracle, and so I don't really have time to do anything with that
yeah,
site. But it is my home site still with my brand. That was the site I ran my consulting practice out of for almost 20 years, and but now it's just sort of sitting there. And but yeah, I'll keep it up there.
awesome. And there was I still remember that I think you were the first person I ever saw who sang during an Oracle session. So tell us about that experience.
Sure. So yes, I had the first sing-along or presentation at a hot sauce conference. So it was another small consulting company called Hot Sauce, HOTSOS, that had annual, probably still does have annual presentations, annual conferences in Texas. And I had a presentation I gave where I talked about if you don't know enough to, for example, understand the tables underlying your query, then you don't know enough to write the SQL. And there were a number of things. If you don't know enough this, you don't know enough that, you don't know enough that, you don't know enough that. And so my refrain was, if you don't know enough to, whatever, you don't know enough to write the SQL. And I got everybody to sing along.
I remember that.
And it was very silly, but I think people enjoyed it. And maybe the presentation next door, hearing all this through the barrier, thought something really weird was going on. But people were entertained.
Yeah, I think it would be fun to watch it again. I'm not sure if it is available online, but
It's
I'll.
not available online. Sadly, it was not videotaped
Okay,
before YouTube.
all good. So you appear to be a voracious reader. What are your top few favorite books of all time?
Oh gosh, that's a tough one. I love Heinlein. I love Neil Stevenson. Um, and science fiction is a big part of it. Um, I love Yuval Noah Harari's history and philosophy stuff. He's now talking a lot about AI, and I highly recommend his AI YouTube videos, AI related YouTube videos, and all his other YouTube videos. A deeply wise man, I believe, and very inspirational, I think, and a lot of really good ideas about where humanity's come from and where we're going and how we can do better. Favorite books, gosh, I can't really name one, but like I say, I've loved Heinlein. I've loved Neil Stephenson even more, I think. Awesome author. His what was it called? I wrote a book about the Seven Eves, I think. Anyway, about humanity leaving Earth because Earth is about to become uninhabitable, and we end up in orbit around Earth, dodging asteroids, dodging chunks of the moon coming down on Earth, and somehow scraping through that evolutionary challenge to the species. And a wonderful, wonderful book, with a lot of great ideas about technology. And he has an idea in there of capturing ice from a comet and using the ice, the material from the ice, as propellant to push the iceberg in space to where it's more useful, low Earth orbit, for example. And then you could use more of it to provide propellant to get from low Earth orbit to anywhere you want in the solar system. And I think this is an amazing idea. And I have some thoughts about how to do this that don't quite follow the path that he laid out. But I think that ice would be a wonderful propellant source. It's obviously not an energy source, so you can't just burn it and shoot it out the exhaust. But you could have, for example, solar cells that create enough electricity that you can electrolyze the ice, the melted ice, into hydrogen and oxygen, and that makes wonderful rocket propellant. And you could go anywhere in the solar system with that. And so sending something out to capture ice from comets, hopefully nearby comets, and then bringing the ice back, and then doing it again with the propellant from that to even more, and bringing more back, you could have exponential growth in the amount of propellant available to populate the solar system. And I think that humanity will populate the solar system. I don't think necessarily the planets are all that friendly to populate, but I think that asteroids, near Earth asteroids, can be used as building material to build O'Neill environments. Gerard K. O'Neill is a wonderful author. You asked about books. He's a wonderful author who talks about using extraterrestrial material that's not, deep down the Earth gravity well, therefore more accessible, to use that material to build rotating stations in orbit that could potentially be populated by more than the population of the Earth. We could have more people in O'Neill habitats than we have on the surface of the Earth.
Very interesting. So, well, Dan, it was a pleasure talking to you. Any parting words you want to say?
Well, just thank you, Fuad. Thank you so much for having me, and it's always a
Thank you.
pleasure to talk to you. You've got some great ideas, and I've followed your career with great interest. So
Thank you
thank you
very
for
much.
having me.
Much appreciated. Thanks a lot. And where people can reach to you if they want to get in touch after watching this video?
My regular email address is DANTOW, Dan Tao, at SingingSQL.com.
Well, thanks, Dan, and we'll be in touch. Thanks.
Thank you, Fuad.